and I'm the secondary digital learning and computer science specialist. And as John mentioned, I am very new to the position. I am about a month and a half in, so it has been a lot of fun kind of launching right into helping and as much as what I can. So before we get started today, we kind of wanted to just put out a poll to everyone to kind of get an idea of which of the topics that we're offering that everyone is most interested in. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my poll, hopefully. Oh, okay, there we go. I was going to say the first question did not look right. If it shows you 2 questions, ignore the first one, but I think that it's just going to show you 1. So this is just kind of an idea of some of the stuff that we have in mind to talk about. It's a multiple choice, so if you're interested in more than one area, feel free to indicate that. And I'll just give a minute for everyone to poll, and then I'll end the poll and share the results out. I'm starting to feel when we do these polls like I need some Jeopardy music or something, like a countdown. We're just about at 80%. I'm going to give it just another couple quick seconds for anybody who's finishing up, and then I'll end it. And it seems like just about every time we have done a poll so far, there are a few folks who seem to either not be able to click into the poll and actually select a response. So if you're having any issues like that, feel free to type what you're most interested in right in the chat if you are willing and interested in doing so. So it looks like leveraging all of this media, specifically with a focus on interaction and engagement with students, is the highest priority for everyone, which seems, logical. And then we've got best practices surrounding visual representations of information and, infographic creation, stuff like that. And then it looks like people are slightly more interested in infographics and posters, but only just. So we'll try to cover a little bit of all of this while we move through the session today. And I encourage you to ask questions as we go along. This is definitely kind of designed to be a back and forth nature, so feel free to either type in the chat or chime in as we go along. John, I don't know if you want me to start with things or if you want to start. I don't know if you have a topic in mind.
Did you want to kind of give a kind of overview or a background or something, kind of the idea of visual representations and stuff?
Yeah, certainly. That's a great place to start instead of just diving right in, which is what I often do. So, okay, for any of you who might not be familiar, let's start with just kind of a basic definition of a few of these terms. So an infographic is generally, you could consider it a poster, but usually an infographic is bigger than a poster would be, and you can zoom in and out on it to see all of the areas of it. So if you've ever seen an infographic online, they're often kind of longer than what a normal page size would be, and a lot of times you can zoom in and out on them. And they're very graphical in nature. We'll show a few here very soon. Memes are the static images that you see with text. Usually, most often it's on top and on bottom, but people are starting to get more and more creative with the way that they're building memes. So some of them are like stacked and different things now. And gifs are the ones that move. So it'd be multiple images that move, and sometimes they'll have wording with them as well. Often not, but sometimes they do. And the idea behind this session today primarily is that in an asynchronous primarily, but also in just a digital format, text can be overwhelming. If anyone has ever had any type of web page design training or done any type of work like that, one of the things that they really emphasize is focusing on how much text you have on your page at a time when you're looking at it, because it affects the cognitive load of the viewer to have to try to take all of that in one image. So some of the best practices are to stagger your text and to put it into segments, to section it based on thought processes and ideas. But one of the nice things that we've seen happening a lot more often are educators creating infographics and posters. And they have come out with a lot of really easy, user-friendly, wonderful, free tools to help people make these infographics. So the process of taking what you would normally have as text instructions or text information and transferring it to an infographic can be tricky, or it can be really straightforward depending on how much information you're trying to share and how easy it is to visually represent what you're talking about. I've seen some really simple infographics where it was just, hey, here's 5 things to keep in mind while you're engaging in this or while you're doing this. And then I've seen infographics where like it's a 22-step process that like really walks you through. So I think that the design of it ends up being really important depending on how much information you're trying to put into it and what the message is that you're trying to convey. And so we have a few tools that we're going to demonstrate and some links that we can share that kind of talk about best practices and suggestions for how you might incorporate some of these things into the classroom or into your interactions back and forth with students. I think John is ready to demonstrate one of both of our favorite tools, which is Canva. Some of you might already be familiar. Canva is a tool that has they have like free features, and then they also offer like if you pay for their premium, you can get like a bunch of extra features. But the free version has a lot. They have everything from photos that you like, stock photos that you can pull into your infographic, to fully built templates, to a whole wide variety of things that you can do. And this tool will also, it can help you make posters as well. I know I haven't mentioned that yet, but a poster would just be like a smaller version of an infographic. The difference between the two would just be the info part. Usually in a poster, you're just trying to put a very small message, whereas in an infographic, you're really trying to convey some information most often. So I'll hand it off to John now.
So Canva, it's really versatile, and there are a lot of ways to use it. I think if you're doing, certainly if you're doing anything with social media and a lot of media production, visual media production, this can be a nice tool just to get on there. And they're very good about labeling different things. So if you're trying to get something that's sized for a specific platform like Instagram or Twitter or whatever, they have all those presets in there, which can be very, very useful. So I'm going to start just kind of with a basic design. So you can see it kind of gives you over here on the left-hand side, it kind of gives you some of those prompts. So if you're looking for something specific, then you can focus on whatever that specific thing is. I'll do poster just because we mentioned that one. So over here on the side, so one of the things that's nice is that they have a lot of kind of templates, and sometimes just looking through some of those can kind of trigger maybe what it is that you're looking for. So just to kind of pull up an example of one that's free. We'll see when it loads. So this one kind of just talking about the coronavirus. So this is a nice kind of talking point. So if you're trying to convince students or convince yourself, why would I do something with posters? So there is obviously information in here. And I mean, we don't necessarily need to zoom in and like look at what each piece says. But you can just see in terms of representation of information, you've got 7 boxes here. There's a title, there's some additional information, and then there's an image icon that's going to kind of build off of that. So if you have a student, and probably for some of you, you can't really read this very well because it's so small on your screen, but those images, you can probably get at what are some of the things that they're getting at here. So you might be able to just read the title quickly, wash your hands, and then you can see it there. Here's a graphic of somebody washing their hands. So I think that's one of the kind of key concepts when you're talking about visual representation, is trying to really boil down the content that you're putting out there. And for some of your students, they're going to be more receptive if you're sharing information this way with them, because they'll be able to consume it much more quickly. And I think the flip side of that is, I think creating something like that is a little bit more interesting than trying to write out a paper or do a larger response. And if you have kids that are artistic, you know, they can kind of tap into those skills as well, whether it is, you know, drawing something or creating something in another platform and bringing it across into a poster or whatever creation, in infographic or something like that that they're creating. So I think that's kind of one of the considerations there, is that you're probably going to have some students that this is just going to speak to them, both in terms of consumption and in terms of production.
I think you also touched on an important piece about the way that you can scaffold here. So from a, like, if you think about the level that you can read this at, you can kind of read all of the bit, like the stay at home, check your temperature, watch for other symptoms. Yeah. But like, if you want to learn more, you could kind of dig into what the text is that's underneath of that.
Yes. So, I mean, really, there's a lot of information here, but if you boiled this down just to the actual text that's on the page, I mean, it would be, you know, a couple paragraphs. Like, it's not as much. So for some, I always like when you can convince students to do something that seems like less work when in fact it's actually more work, or it's on par. And that's definitely the case with creating a poster like this. So just in terms of the actual how to do this, I'll go to plus, so I got a blank page. So over here on the left-hand side, I mean, we did look through the template, so you certainly can adjust any templates that are on there. And sometimes that's a nice place just to get started. If you're starting with a blank situation like here, you have photos. You can upload any photos that you want. There are kind of stock photos in here that you can use. And you can, I love this search feature. The only drawback is if you're not using Canva Pro, they're going to show you all the things even if you can't use them, and they're marked, but that can still be kind of a little bit frustrating. So I'm just going to put in the word summer. So you can see that there are some like this one that are free. This one is for Pro. So that's just kind of one of the things to keep in mind. And then you would bring an image in. This is a very universal design. You can grab these corner pins and you can adjust things. They've got the snap in feature, which is really nice. You can also stretch things, and you can see as it's stretching, it's actually moving the things. It's not distorting the image. It's actually just stretching it. So if you needed to fill up certain perspective, you also can double click on it, and then that will allow you, if you want to do any sort of adjustments that way. So you can see there's a faded out part out here. Those aren't going to be part of the final box image that's in here. So this is pretty common design in terms of working with images and stuff nowadays. So I think that's one of the things that's nice. I think even though this is a pretty powerful program, it's very similar to other programs that are out there. This elements piece is a lot of icons and things like that. Ooh. So like this hamburger. Ooh, I clicked on two. So like this hamburger, if I for some reason wanted a hamburger at the beach, I could add that in there, and it's very easy to adjust and move those things around. Text is kind of the same way. You've got a few different options in here, and does it want me to drag it in or click? There we go. And then you can just click in and make adjustments and add add and adjust as necessary. And I think these, if you stretch, it actually stretches. Oh, that hamburger is a gift for you. And in videos, you can add in kind of visual elements if you want to. Although this isn't a video production app, like, I mean, you can have kind of video be part of it or GIFs and moving images. So just so you know that there are those pieces that you can have in there. Background is, so you can see I've got a white background there. If I clicked something else, let's kind of add that in there in the background. And then uploads, if you wanted to upload any images and have stuff in there. This also works across platforms. So if you've got a phone that you're taking pictures on, it's very easy to download the Canva app and then pull those images right off of your phone if you're taking those better quality images. So another thing I really like about this is that you can use it across platforms and kind of leverage that web-based accessibility for this. So that's kind of just a little overview of how you could kind of start with making a poster or something like that with Canva. But I mean, really the sky's the limit in terms of any sort of multimedia production that you want to make. If you want something for social media, if you want, we kind of talked about memes and stuff earlier, you can certainly do something like that. And I should show you guys, just because I've had a couple people bring this up before. But in the search here, if you, I know if you search, you can definitely find it. They have a ton of Zoom virtual backgrounds. So if you're in Zoom session and like I have a background behind me, and if you're looking for something more interesting, if you're seeing the same things over and over again, you can harvest from here or make your own on here very easily as well. So that can be one of your little takeaways for today as we go into doing more and more virtual conferences these days. People always looking for ways to liven up their backgrounds. And you actually could, in terms of visual representation, I think I have a copy of one in my designs. I had a teacher mention this to me, but this is kind of, I think this is still on topic a little bit, but you could actually set up a virtual background that had important information in it. So this is kind of an example of one that I had kind of pulled and adjusted from here. So if you're doing virtual time with students, it can be nice, I think, to have a little checkboard behind you. So as kids are talking and looking at you, they might have those visual cues in there. It might be a little less distracting than what your cat's doing behind you. And maybe they'll kind of be looking and thinking about what are the different steps in terms of your agenda for the day. So that is kind of a snapshot of Canva, and hopefully it's something that you and your students would like.
So before we move on to anything else, let's just open up and see if anyone has any questions about anything we've talked about so far. It can be Canva specific, or it could just be the topic in general.
If you create a Canva image, how do you move it into something else like Google Classroom or something?
So anything that you create on there, you can download. So it would download as like an image file or something like that. So if you download the image, then you can go into Google Classroom and upload the image. So that
you can download it as a PDF. There's multiple options for like what format, depending on what you need to do with it.
Yep.
I'm interested in slideshows. And what do you use? What do you think is the best avenue to make a slideshow? I've been using Google Photos. It's okay.
So a slideshow in terms of kind of like just showing a series of photos?
Yeah, like for graduation, end of year kind of thing.
Oh, that is that's kind of a separate piece.
Well, you could make a GIF.
You certainly could. That
I don't know
mean,
how many images you have though. That's the only thing.
yeah.
Like it would depend on how, like, because you could do probably 10 to 15 and it wouldn't be bad. But when you make a GIF, once you hit the button, like you have to wait till it cycles all the way back around.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of like kind of slideshow productions like that, I think people tend to leverage video production software. So like iMovie or WeVideo or something like that. So that would be my suggestion initially. There's some, I know, like on the MacBooks, iPhoto, if you have a photo album in there, they'll automatically render slideshows. So that could be an option if you have a MacBook. I was trying to think, I don't know if Google Photos does that in the exact same kind of way or if it's a little bit different. I should know because I use Google Photos for storing my own photos, but that might be, I don't know if anybody out there has used Google Photos for that purpose. Google Slides would suggest, and that's certainly something you can use. I think the challenge is that if you have a lot of pictures and you're trying to pull them into a slideshow, you're going to have to kind of tweak each one as you're going along, and I think that can be kind of a logistical nightmare. And I have seen and tried to use with mixed results. Some programs that will grab photos from a file and they'll put it in and populate I think I did that with Google Slides at one point in time. And it worked okay, but just the images, I needed to go through and kind of like touch up each image and kind of readjust things. And if you're trying to avoid the time commitment of that, that can be, I think if that's the thing that you're trying to avoid, then you might want to stay away from a slideshow and maybe go more to like a video editing software.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions at the top of anyone's mind? I see creating GIFs in the chat. Yeah, that's something that we are definitely going to move into. Does anyone have a question about anything we've talked about so far before we move into that? Or are we good? Good, okay. So I am a big fan of GIFs, just personally. I think that they are a great way to kind of communicate humor, lighten the mood. Like it's a great way to kind of show somebody that you're feeling positive about something. You know, they say that an image says 1,000 words. I was making the joke to John earlier. Said, so what does that mean? GIF, is that like 3,000, 5,000? Not really sure. But I'll give a demonstration. I have a very brief PowerPoint that I saved each slide as an image file within one folder. And I'm going to go ahead and upload those files into a tool online called Giphy. And I will share my screen and also drop in the name of that tool. This is a tool that you can both make GIFs and find GIFs. So if you just want to find one real quick to add to something and you don't want to make one custom, this is a good way to do it. I will just, disclaimer, you want to, I'll share a link before we're done here. If you're going to share a GIF repository with your students, then you might want to share with them the Giphy Mac app or one of the other apps that are actually designed for kids so that you can make sure that you that they have like a filter, because some GIFs can be inappropriate, as I'm sure we all know. But I'm gonna log in because apparently I was not. You know what? I don't even think I have one right now. Actually, sorry guys, one second.
I think another thing that you might kind of think about with GIFs are a way of concisely kind of showing a process. So you could have students, for example, show like a butterfly's life cycle, kind of going through making those different pieces, and then they could make a GIF that would run. So I think sometimes that can be a way to think about it, even though that seems kind of like, I think we kind of think of GIFs as kind of being small, small little animations that, often, like what Emma was saying, often they're, used for, adding humor to situations and stuff like that. I think having that kind of thought in mind that you could show some kind of process or cycle or sequence, I think a GIF's a really great way to do that. And it's just one of the things that I like about kind of leveraging technology with students is if you're doing something that seems a little different than what they've done before, sometimes you can get a level of buy-in early on that you wouldn't normally get, just because it's like, oh, this is something different and new. And they're going to have probably a sense of, okay, I get what a GIF is. I'll give this a try. So I think sometimes, even though it might seem like, oh, this is a lot to be taking on for kind of such a small project, I think you often will get the benefit of some student buy-in where you might not have had it otherwise. And then they're actually, by the time they might be kind of like, oh, okay, this is like educational GIFs. This isn't like funny, haha GIFs. Then, by that point, hopefully they've produced something already. So that's definitely one of my tech piece of advice, is that I've certainly over the years, I've gotten kids to kind of invest some time into doing something before they're kind of like, this like the education flags go off and they like tune out again. Clearly, I worked in a middle school for a long time.
Yeah, I think you make up a really great point, though. They are definitely, there's a bunch of uses that can be had for them. I would say one thing that I like is that if you have like 4 or 5 really simple instructions that people have a really hard time with, like say you're always telling your students like, do this, this, and this. I've seen a lot of jokes on Facebook about like the actual turn in button on Google Classroom. Like they put the work there and they post it, but they don't ever actually hit that turn in button. So you could create a GIF of the screenshots of how that would actually go. Okay, so I'm on giphy.com/upload, and the way that I got to that was just going to giphy.com and hitting the upload button that was up here. I bypassed signing in because I realized that you don't actually have to sign in, and that's why I couldn't find my accounts, because I don't have one. So that's probably a helpful tip. It seems to be going really slow, but I'm going to upload the PowerPoint that I saved as images and kind of show you how that might look as a GIF. It just might be very slow paced. Okay.
I think one of the things that we've all learned during this time is certainly some battles with people in your family over Wi-Fi. It's always a fun thing.
Yes, and I think my computer is probably also just strapped for resources right now. Should have done a restart.
So Emma,
all right. So
my hunch would
be
because we had somebody kind of asking about it, if it's free and stuff like that. So theoretically, if you had an account, then you could kind of save those in your account. But if you wanted to just kind of do a one-off, you wouldn't have to set up an account.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm pretty certain that you either have to post it or just I think you just download it. And so it's a time thing. But we'll see in just a moment here when we go through this process. So I'm just going to select all 10 because this is my slideshow. I want to turn it into a GIF. And hopefully that will only take a moment. Oh, so okay, now they're making me create an account. That did not used to be the way that it was. Looks like they're trying to make make the internet a safer place, you guys. We gotta give them a round of applause for that at least. Okay, so in order to do this, it'll take me an extra minute. So I am going to stop sharing that for a minute, and I'll work on that in the background. And I've got something I would love to share.
So there is also an app for this. So if you have students that are working on iPad or they have access on their phone, they certainly could be creating on their phone. And then if you're, you can use those images right off of your phone. So sometimes that can be easier if you're working in that capacity.
Yes, definitely. And that's where you will actually find the apps that are tailored to students. They're usually, it's the actual app for the like iPads and stuff like that. So I'll actually drop that in as well before I forget. The first link that I dropped in here is just an article that kind of talks about how memes and gifs can actually be pretty powerful in the classroom when they're leveraged effectively, and it kind of gives a few suggestions for how that might be done. I found that really helpful when I was trying to frame my thoughts of how we might be able to incorporate this as a useful learning experience. And then that right there is what Common Sense recommends for student and teacher GIF apps. So if you're looking for actual applications that can do that, there's those as well. Okay. So John, do you want to talk a little bit about the visual representation piece while I work on trying to get Giphy to function for me?
Sure. And I just dropped in there. So if you're working on Chromebooks, the little add-on that you could get for your Chromebooks as well. So I don't know. I haven't used the a lot of times the app on a Chromebook sometimes is just kind of directing you to the web-based version. And that would be my assumption just from looking at that is the case. I haven't used Giphy on a Chromebook before, so it might be a little bit different. So if you're going between an iPhone or something like that. Yes, but visual representation. Let me pull up I was telling Emma earlier when I was working as a tech integrator at a school and was trying to convince people to use visual representations. Our teacher evaluation system relied heavily on the work of Robert Marzano. So one of the ways that I kind of convinced people that it was a good investment of time was highlighting some of Marzano's high yield strategies. So things that work, if you use them, seem to be very effective in working with students. So I think in terms of thinking of visual representation, or he uses the word non-linguistic representations. So he said using that yields a 27 percentile gain for students. So pretty big gains there for students if they're using those kinds of visual representations of information. And then the other part of that, I think that you can tie in, if you're having, like we saw with the COVID graphic there on that poster, that students are really going to have to take that information and summarize things. They're going to have to boil it down. And that kind of area, that high yield gain area of summarizing and note taking, is a 34 percentile gain. So most of his high yield areas are all like in the 20 to 30 percentile gain range, if that means anything to people. So things that really, really make an impact on student learning. And if you're doing something like making an infographic with students, I mean, that's hitting two of those high yield areas. So that's definitely a huge, a huge area of gain just from having a student go through that process.
I did a thing this morning that had infographics, and one of the things that he showed was a picture of like a rock slide, the actual sign of a rock slide, and then a paragraph telling him, and he said, which one drew your attention? And everybody of course said, the sign. You knew from the sign what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So we're we get that a ton of times.
And I think that it's one of those things that I think just because we have so much stuff around us in terms of kind of capturing our attention and senses, I think sometimes we don't even like think about that. And we're so much learning and education is very text focused in terms of reading text and then creating text, that I think sometimes we forget just how important capturing those elements that don't actually include text really are. So I think there's definitely something there. And I think if you kind of take some time and really think about it, and certainly if you had a student go through that process, I know that you would see that for sure.
So
all right, Emma, are we ready?
we are. Technical issues spare no one. All right, so email's not gonna be helpful for you. I didn't want to move forward without showing you guys that, because it happens really fast. So I made sure that it didn't upload the stuff yet so that you could see the whole entire process. So there's my brief little slideshow. This really isn't ideal for a GIF just because it's a lot of information really fast, but I'm just using this as an example of how you can make a GIF out of a slideshow. So as you can see, it's going super fast, and it'll allow me to reorganize or remove stuff if I want to. Like if I was like, oh, I don't need that, then I could do that. I could also add more, but I'm going to continue. It would let me add a caption, style it. I could change the color of whatever caption I wanted to put on it if I want to. I'm pretty certain that I can slow it down, but that was something that I was just trying to figure out. It's been a while since I have actually been in here and made a GIF. Can't remember what the last one I made was, but yeah, okay, so maybe it won't let me slow it down. No, okay. So I guess that's something to keep in mind. I might have to do a little bit more experimenting to see if I could slow it down. If not, then you would want to keep that in mind as far as like how much information you're putting in it. If it is a slideshow, if you're doing a photo, like a photo collage type of deal, that might be a little bit easier to leverage this way. I really thought they used to be able to slow it down, but I'm not seeing that anywhere.
Like the frame rate.
Yes. Oh, see,
Yeah.
what's that? I want to go. Does anyone know? I'm guessing, like, maybe. Hush, puppy. Sorry.
Your dog knows.
Yes, I wish she had all the answers, right? I'll try to troubleshoot that and see if I can't figure it out, because I thought you used to be able to adjust this.
Where it says 0.1 second, can you change the time?
Yeah, that's what I was trying. I was trying to like click and see if it would let me. It won't actually let me do anything besides grab it. Okay, well, I'll keep experimenting with this and see if I can find a solution to that. But for now, you can see that it, in theory, should be adjustable so that you can kind of slow it down, so that if you were trying to put your, if you were trying to put your whole presentation on there, that you could slow it down so that each scene would have more time on it. So does anyone have any questions about GIFs or memes or kind of leveraging these things, and, you know, any just troubleshooting questions or anything like that?
How could you use that with just like one or two pictures instead of a whole presentation? I'm still not sure how to create a meme or GIF that you could actually use.
Ah, okay. Well, what I showed you is how to make a GIF. So you would want at least 2 images to have that back. It would have to at least flip back and forth. And in that case, you would have just chosen your 2 images to upload instead of like all 10 that I chose. My dog is just misbehaving terribly today. I'm sorry. And so I'll show you the process. Thank you, because I actually did not do that. I'll show you the process to make a meme as well. That should only take a couple. Okay, John, if you could drop the link to this into the chat or just the name of it, that would be great. This is just like a standard meme generator. A meme generator is basically allows you to upload your own image and then just place text right on top of it. Or you can select from some like really common, like popular memes. Some of them I'm sure you have seen. And so if I was going to make a meme, I wish I had a clever one thought out. A lot of people will put text at the top and the bottom. Oh, that's not at the bottom. There's a bunch of different options for how you can set it up. And then you would just like, I'm gonna just leave it with the 1 for now. And I'm going to generate it using just this. And then you have the link to the image, or you can email it to yourself. I don't think that you can just download it. I think you would have to share it somewhere or email it to yourself. You could upload your own. So if you had like an image of something you wanted your students to, cover and you wanted to write some text over it, you could do that. You could kind of use this in a lot of different ways. It's just kind of the basic functionality of the tool. You can put the sunglasses on them and adjust it and stuff, So there's all sorts of things you could do to make it silly. I think just kind of like knowing what purpose you're kind of using it for. If you're using it to kind of share information, then you would want to make sure that your text is descriptive and that you put an effective image in there. If you're just trying to be silly, then it really doesn't matter what you come up with.
And if you're ever curious about kind of the background of a meme, I think sometimes things come up and people are like, what is that? Like, where does that come from? knowyourmeme.com. They do have videos on there, but they also have kind of just entries about different things. But that can be a really great resource because definitely want to make sure you're using a meme, even if it's something that's kind of popular, but something that's appropriate for students. You don't want them to do too much digging and find out that, yeah, like Phil is saying, some of the content is definitely not school appropriate. But I think it's interesting because it's such a part of kind of our pop culture right now that I think anytime you can leverage those things, you're going to get kids, kind of interested and engaged in a different way. So I think that's kind of the thinking behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like that idea that you're meeting them, where their interests are, they're sending stuff back and forth to each other and things of that nature. So I think it's definitely, you've got to know what the line is, but I think once you've established that and you kind of set those norms up for your class and, it's the classroom management piece, I think, comes into play a little bit there, because you can kind of set, you know, we're gonna be using these, but this is how, and we're not gonna be doing this, that, or the other, you know, kind of setting the expectations up front if you are going to be having them searching for their own and using them and stuff like that. I saw a question in the chat about images that keep in line with copyright laws. And I think that this is a really interesting question to bring up regarding memes, because I think memes kind of are, I want to say, almost in a gray area, but I don't think it's a gray area so much as what it is the way it's interpreted, because you're taking an image and you're changing it. So there's a little bit of leverage there. If you are looking to make your own memes and you want to 100% certain that you're not, you know, having like any type of gray area that you're not getting into, you could use a tool. There are many copyright-free image search tools. One of them is called Pixabay, Pixabay. I can put this in the chat. And another one is called Unsplash. And these are, it's basically like a Google search engine, but it's specifically for images that are free to use, share, modify. So like the moment you're in that search engine, you're kind of housed within a safe zone. You can use Google search tools to refine for copyright, but I caution you to go to the source file and make sure that it is in fact copyright free, because Google will often pull up things saying it's copyright free, but when you actually go through all of the hoops to find out where it came from, that it is very much in fact copyrighted. So if you are trying to kind of make sure that you're aligned with those would be my pieces of advice on that. Yeah, and I see that as like, where would you send kids for images? Those would both be really great because they have the, you know, the safe content type of things on them. So I would definitely encourage you to check them out. I think Pixabay is more content friendly towards kids than Unsplash, but they're both pretty close.
On Flipgrid, you said that there was a feature where you could have to approve the images before everyone could see it. Is there anything like that with memes if you're using that with the class?
So that would come down to the platform that you were having them put their memes on, because ultimately they'll have freedom to kind of create whatever they want within that domain. But if you're having them share it on a place, like if you're having them put it on a Padlet or something like that, or in your Google Classroom, that's when you could add your layer of moderation to make sure that you can approve the memes before the other students can see them.
And Flipgrid might be nice in terms of, you could, for example, share a meme with students and just ask them to respond. Why would somebody think that this is funny? Because, you know, obviously the purpose of a meme, hopefully, is for it to be funny. And so it kind of gets kids thinking and trying to explain, you know, deeper thoughts than just kind of exactly what they're seeing. Because humor really gets at this kind of unspoken area of language. So in that sense, I mean, they're really having to do some deeper thinking and digging there to kind of pull that out and explain. For me, that's always been one of the reasons I've liked, you know, whether it's having students design memes or kind of come up with some sort of meme as an assignment, because they've really got to think. Again, it's one of those things that they think, oh my gosh, that would be so easy. But for it to be really good, it has to be clever. And, you know, for it to be clever, you've really got to spend a lot of time thinking about it and kind of constructing it and crafting it.
Yeah, and I also want to just I want to give voice to a point that was made in the chat, and that is the idea that memes and GIFs and things of that nature, anything really that you put on the internet, does not necessarily go away. So it's important to be really thoughtful when you're crafting something, to make sure that you're being sensitive to, you know, if you're using a person's image, that you, one, have their permission and they know the context that it's going to be used in, and, you know, two, just make sure that whatever you're sharing isn't going to go viral in a negative way. I think that as long as you're being conscious of those things, that this area of like incorporating this type of media into learning can be super fun. And John is going to share with us the link for getting your certificate of contact hours if you are interested in pursuing that. The link is case sensitive, so when you do see it, when you see the capitalized letters, they do have to be capitalized in order for it to get you there. And then the other piece is just when you fill out the form, make sure that your email is 100% correct, because the certificate won't make it to you until then. Oh, actually, there is a third thing. The tool that we are using to produce the certificates has a limit on how many it can do at a time. So it can take like 3 to 5 days for you to receive your certificate, just due to that processing time. So does anyone have any final closing questions or thoughts?
I know when you shared Flipgrid and Padlet, you gave us time to play around with it, and then you had another training a little bit later to see if there was any questions once we started using it. Any plans to follow up with this?
I mean, I would definitely, I don't think we've really 100% talked about that, but I think that there's definitely interest here. And our goal so far with our collaborative office hours has been to meet the need of the field. So when we see that there's interest in a topic, we do try to explore it as deeply as people are interested in going. So I would think that it's safe to say that within the coming weeks, we'll probably offer another session where we take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of these tools.
This is a joke, but can we call you?
You can call my office phone, but
do you ever answer personal questions like somebody's stuck? Is that part of your job description, or is it more the training? And send them to Google, right? My IT son says, look at, you know, like Google everything, right? You can Google anything. It's like reboot and Google. Those two things, you're master of everything.
So I think for this session, part of this was, I think we had things like Flipgrid and Padlet and Google Classroom that we had a lot of people asking about. So it made sense to do that. And then Emma was like, let's do something kind of fun. So this was her idea of doing something, you know, a little fun and different. And I think part of it was just to kind of see if there was, you know, if there was interest and, you know, kind of what we hear back from people. So certainly if, you know, if this is something that you're planning on doing or kind of are interested in some follow up on this, I could definitely see us training opportunities that we do, you know, further along in the summer. I could see it certainly incorporating some pieces of this, whether it's us, you know, doing a live session like this or kind of having some recorded offerings for people that kind of would show you, you know, this is how you use Giphy on different platforms and kind of going through it that way. I think there's definitely the potential there, and the department certainly looking at ways to provide tools and opportunities for folks coming into the upcoming school year. I know this year's not even done. We're already thinking about next year. But I think coming back in the fall, I think people are going to be looking for some, you know, different ways to engage students if they're working in a remote atmosphere or they're working in a flipped environment. They're going to be trying to find what are those ways to engage students. And I think that was kind of what we were getting at. These are some different tools that you might not have used yourself, but I think anybody that works with kids of any age can understand how some of these things that we shared could speak to your students.
I also see a question about if we'll be bringing on any like teacher experts moving forward, and that is certainly something that we're hoping to incorporate into our summer PD, is to try to find some teacher leaders or ed tech leaders who are confident using some of these tools and can show us all of the awesome stuff that they're doing.
Yeah, and so certainly this is something if any of you, use some of this stuff and feel really excited about it and want to get on and share, certainly feel free to reach out to us. I had the benefit of being able to go out to some schools and make a lot of connections with teachers that way, and Emma has not had that luxury so far. So I think there is definitely some level of challenge with finding who are the teachers out there that are doing some amazing things that we want to try to pull in. Lindsay Davis was somebody, if you were on here on Tuesday talking about Seesaw, somebody recommended I go out and watch her in a class, and she was brilliant. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to reach out to her and talk to her about Seesaw, because she really gets it, and I think would be able to explain it to a number of people, and she did a fantastic job. So I definitely think that we'll be bringing on some teachers to share the ways that they're using whatever tool it is that they're using.
Awesome. Well, it is 4:02, so I am going to call it a day. I'm so glad that everyone joined us. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone. And keep an eye on the weekly schedule for our upcoming summer offerings.
Absolutely. And have a great long weekend, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
You